Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cameron Bell. I'm your host, as always, on Extra. And joining me to discuss a very, very positive win against Sparta Prague last night in the Europa League at Ibrox is my very good friend, Colin McMillan. Colin, thank you for joining me. A great result last night. I think it's as I said, they're very, very positive. How are you feeling following the result last night and having a bit of time to digest it today?
Yeah, indeed. Hi, Cammy. Always good to be back on Extra. We spoke last night on the Patreon site after the match. I always do the kind of post match pods, and we spoke last night where we were delighted with the 3 points. It was a great result. I think any result in Europe where you win a match, be it home or away, regardless of who it's against, you've got to be happy with. I think there was a slight kind of disappointment from me, maybe just at the full time whistle about how difficult we made the last sort of 15, 20 minutes for ourselves after being so good in that first half. But now, kind of 12, 14 hours on from the game, had a chance to kind of watch it back, seen most of the main bits again and stuff. We played really well, Cammy. In that first half, we were excellent. The second half felt, I think, a hell of a lot more worrying, sitting in Ibrox in the cold, that I actually did watching it back. I think we were actually quite steady. I don't think there was really much fear about dropping the points in the game actually come the second half. They came back into it a little bit. Our legs got a little bit tired, and that was really the story of the second half. So yeah, in the cold light of day now, I'm delighted with where we find ourselves now. We've won the match. We've now got a home game coming up in 3 weeks' time against, on paper, the worst team in the group, even though they somehow still managed to beat Michael Beale's Rangers. And if we win that, we're through with a game to spare. That, when you kind of factor in the season we've had so far and how stop-start and highs and lows they've been in it so far, that's a great position to find ourselves in, and that's thanks to the result last night.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know you're referring on to Michael Beale's Rangers, I think in the kind of aftermath in terms of where we were at with what we've been dealing with. It still very much was his team, and now I feel that what we witnessed last night and what we've been seeing in the last few games, last couple of games, is what is emerging to be Philip Clement's Rangers team. And it's always interesting with this because I think we've discussed long and hard across the course of this season where there's been a disassociation from players. I think at times we've been very, very critical of players, and I stand behind every single word of that. And so to be able to come on and what we've been doing within the last few weeks, Colin, whether it's been post-match pods on our Patreon site, flagship extra, just generally talking about the positive changes that we've seen, I think was encapsulated last night against Sparta Prague. Now, I'll justify that with a couple of different variables in there. First one is, I think we started very, very positively. I think at times we have looked on a European stage, nervous. We did a cross in Prague, we did a cross in Cyprus, and there was some basic errors that we spoke about in those games that we produced ourselves. If I use a tennis parlance, like unforced errors that we just weren't taking care of the ball well enough. And I think last night against Prague, what you saw was a design. I thought you saw a template, but I thought you saw a real, I suppose, really like a lust by our players to get forward as quickly as we can, produce quality every single time they looked after the ball, but also to recover it very quickly when we didn't. And obviously, to be 2 goals up within 20 minutes, I think, it speaks for itself. Arguably by half time, we could have been 3 or 4 goals up. But for me, what we're now seeing is a far more enthusiastic, a far more committed Rangers team. And almost to a man, you've seen a step up in improvement. There's absolutely no doubt, and we're going to have to talk about him because what a difference he's made since coming back from that cheekbone injury. But Danilo, I think now a fantastic piece of work to be able to get the opener for us. Hunts down Gomez, who I think had one of the worst games I think I've ever seen anyone at Ibrox have in the first half. but I don't want to take away from Danilo's opportunistic. He goes hunting, produces the error. Then the second part of that, and most critical, he gets into the box and he just looks like a natural finisher. Now, I don't want to slag off Cyril Dessers. I understand that, but people are naturally going to make the comparison. But Danilo is absolutely the real deal, Colin.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Just before we mentioned Danilo, just kind of what you were saying about the team. The biggest thing I can say about the team, Cammy, and watching it just now, is that there's players that I was completely checked out on, players that I was done with, players I did not want to see playing for this club again. And in the short time the new manager's been here, they've turned around that opinion on me already. And it's because I think when you're watching this team now, it's very clear, I think, and very apparent that you're watching a team of players that are drilled, that have clear instructions. They've got, I think they all have team instructions and they have individual instructions. They're being coached throughout the games. Never mind what's happening during the week in the training ground. They're actually getting coached and talked to throughout the match by the manager and his team. And they seem to know what they need to be doing. Before the new manager came in, we had a squad that were tired, dilapidated, and quite a lot of new people that came into it didn't seem to know their role, didn't know what to do, didn't know where each other played, and it showed. And what the manager's been able to do in such a short period of time is quite remarkable in terms of the improvement in the play, the results that are coming through. And he himself says after every game, he's really quick to say, this is just one step. This is just one part. We can't do this in 1 week. We can't do this in 2 weeks. So it's really exciting for me in terms of watching this team and having something to look forward to, Cammy, because it seems like it's been a while since we had something to look forward to. And I can actually see stems and offshoots of this team getting better, going up the levels and improving and improving and improving. And long, long, long may that continue. And a big part of that is the man you mentioned, Danilo. He's came back into the team since this injury, and he's been the striker. He's been the kind of focal point for the attack that we needed. But he's not a goal poacher, Cammy. He's not a guy waiting for tap ins. He's a guy that creates his own chances as well. He's great on the ball. His movement's fantastic. He gets himself into positions to score goals 2, 3, 4 times a game. He doesn't take 2, 3, 4 chances every game and score all these goals. If he did, he wouldn't be here. But the ones he misses, picks himself back up again, and he's there when it matters. And the goal last night was a tremendous example of a guy that knows the press, he knows what he's supposed to do, and he's ready for that any opportunity. He wins that ball back, and he's the coolest guy in Ibrox Stadium. He knows what he needs to do. He takes a few steps forward, calms himself, slots it away. It's a fantastic goal. It's a team goal. It's the press working, and it's a guy who's cool, on form, and full of confidence. And by God, have we needed that so far this season?
Yeah, I totally agree. And our lead was doubled only a few short minutes later. A great finish by Todd Cantwell. There was a chance before this call in which Cantwell had what I think was a shot across the box. It was slightly ahead of Danilo to be able to try and slide in, but it didn't put him off. Cantwell tried something a little bit different this time, where he then cut back inside and was able to finish really strongly. A guy who I think it's fair to say that certainly the Rangers fans have taken to him. And I think Rangers has allowed Todd Cantwell to fall back in love with football again. And I think that when you see the level of quality that he has, what he's capable of doing, and also what he delivers, um, a, a very promising, a very productive and enthusiastic Todd Cantwell will always be dangerous to any of our opponents. This was a great goal. This was a great finish. But again, someone else who I think has probably seen a new lease of life under the new manager. And he was playing well beforehand. I think Todd Cantwell has come in. I think, he started very, very brightly for us as soon as he came to the club. I think the start of this season, it's probably been a little bit different for him, but it's great to see him back in now after a short hiatus of getting back in amongst the goals. But I think for me, Todd Cantwell is as happy creating goals as he is scoring them. So he just wants to be in and around the group. He just wants to be involved. And I think more than anything else, we give him a stage to be able to do that.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I think everybody loves Todd Cantwell, Cammy. I work with a bunch of guys that one of my offices is Norwich, So I've got quite a few guys that spoke to me about Todd Cantwell when we were rumoured to get him and then when we signed him. And they all still take quite a keen interest. They're always asking me how he's getting on, how's he doing. Some of them are amazed at how well he is doing, and some of them are not surprised at all. Things went sour with him down there for a number of reasons. And I think you're right. He did kind of fall out of love with football a little bit. But by God, has he found that spark again? He is loving life up here. You see it on his social media. You see it every time he's interviewed, how passionate he is about the club. And you see it by the way that he plays and the way he interacts with the fans. He tries to G the crowd up and stuff like that as well. He's come in and done really hasn't put a foot wrong since he signed. And then he had a little bit of a dodgy period at the start of this season. Then he had the injury and he had to come back from it. And for the first time since he signed, I think he was maybe not an automatic pick for the new manager right away. He just didn't quite fit the mould for what he wanted him to do. He's now got him playing in this right position, which wasn't coming natural to him. But you can tell that he's been training, he's been working on it, and we're starting to see him actually being very, very effective cutting in from the right and playing there. Which I'll be honest, when he first started doing it, Cammy, I didn't think he was going to be capable of doing that. I thought he was a guy that had to be central. That was just what he had to do. That was how you got the best out of him. But he's shown us the last couple of matches, and tonight in particular, just how good he can be and what he can do as a threat coming down that side. And if that ends up being where he plays for us, and it lets us have other players dominating the centre of midfield and contributing in there, then it's a massive plus for us. He was a little bit greedy tonight at some of his chances. I think he took shots when it might have been better to square it or pass it. But I also get that he's a young guy just coming back from fitness, hasn't scored all season, is desperate to hit the back of the net. So I'm never going to take that away from him, because if it was me, I would be the same. But yeah, he was great. He was great last night. Took his goal really, really well.
Yeah, and what's really important, I think, when you look at this Rangers team now, when you look at the belief that they have within themselves, it feels like a weight has been lifted. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and just continue off the kind of slagging of Michael Beale, because I just think we're past that now, right? We're beyond it. We've got a new manager who's come in, clearly with his own set of ideas, clearly with his own focus areas, and I think he's been quite transparent, not certainly as much as the previous manager in terms of what he says in press conferences, but he's been quite transparent about his expectations from the group. And I think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think that it speaks a lot in terms of the impact that he's made, and also his man management, that you're starting to see the uplift in performances across this. Now, I want to talk about a couple of guys, Colin. We'll talk a little bit more about the second half of the game in just a second. But there's two things that I kind of want to talk about a little bit here, and the first one is the uplift of individual performances, because I was struggling to believe it last night when we were listening to it, that you were starting to hear Belinda Carlisle again going around Ibrox.
I thought that was done. I don't think I'd ever hear that
No,
again.
neither did I. Neither did I. If we were to go back like 2 months ago, then I did not think you were hearing that. And you know, we talk about it quite a bit in terms of, you know, the parody of John Lundstrom, but he has really stepped up to the mark now. The manager has made reference to him in terms of being part of the senior leadership team alongside Tavernier, Goldson, Butland. But he's really stepped into that. We're really unlucky, or I should say the individual is very unlucky in the fact that I think Scott Wright has come into it, because Scott Wright was excellent in Dundee, was excellent against Hearts in the League Cup semi-final. Obviously couldn't feature against Sparta Prague last night because of an injury, so hopefully he'll get the international break to recover for that and come back into it. I think Tavernier has started to recover from what was potentially a shaky start. I think that, and I also want to make mention of this because you were talking about the car pod, and in that show we obviously do man of the match, but for me Ben Davies has to be included as part of that conversation, because I thought against an opponent which could hurt you, that could try and hit you in the break, they're physical. I thought Ben Davies last night, Colin, for me, looked far, far better than he has done in a Rangers jersey in terms of being able to try and position himself, in terms of being able to try and understand the flight and the bounce of the ball, which has cost them a big time previously. And I just thought that it's an example, and I could dream off another couple of players, by the way, that I could start to see where you're seeing improvements coming into that. The second thing I want to talk about on that, and to get your thoughts on, is I also thought that we looked far better in terms of restarting play. So whether that's from a throw in, a free kick, I think our delivery of corners has got far better as well. It's like all of a sudden we've known that there's been a level as fans. We've always known that there's been a level that we know that we can see. We just want to see it more consistently. And now under the new manager, we are.
I think a big thing for me, Cam, and it goes back kind of to what I said earlier, is that the players I think just have a plan, and they know they know like under certain terms they have to stick to it. Footballers, I think, are relatively simple when you break it down. They need to be taught what to do. They need a plan. They need instructions. They need tactics, and obviously there was tactics under the old manager. Obviously there was a plan, but I'm beginning to think that it was perhaps a little bit too open for them. I think the players were maybe given too much of a free role at times. They were maybe given too much opportunities. Just go out and do your stuff. You're great. You're better than this team. Go out and shine, sort of thing.
Oh,
And
I think the manager could definitely overthink it.
yeah, and I think that happened a lot. Whereas I think in some ways it's been taken back to basics now. And the manager when he first came in spoke about marginal gains. He spoke about fixing one thing and then moving on to the next thing. He wanted to identify a couple of things he could fix quickly, fix them, then move on to slightly bigger things, fix them, then move on again. And that seems to be what he's doing. And one of these things is getting these players to know what to do during a game of football, which at times, watching them beforehand, a lot of them have looked like they haven't. And the players you mentioned are massive examples of that. John Lundstrom was nowhere to be seen. He's been one that's actually been very vocal, Cam. He's done a number of interviews, post-match interviews, things like that, where he's said that the place is like it's a breath of fresh air under the new manager. Everything's so much better. Morale's better. They're training better. Jack Butland spoke this week about how much better the training was, and how even players that were asked to take on extra running because they weren't as fit as they should be, they bought into that because they were spoken to and told it wasn't a punishment. You're not being asked to do this because we don't want you in the team. You're being asked to do extra running because we want you to be fit and ready to be in the team. It just seems there's been a whole big kind of mindset flip around everything to do with the football side of the club, and it seems to be working. James Tavernier is looking like the Tav of old, whereas a couple of months ago we all thought he was done. We were talking about his legs being away. Suddenly they're not looking as bad as they looked 2 months ago. Ben Davies, that you mentioned, has always looked a little bit shaky to me. He's never quite looked as confident as a player with his pedigree and his sort of career behind him should look. But last night in the game, he was so composed. His recoveries were great. He done a couple of slide challenges on the pitch where he won balls back. He just looked like the player I thought we were signing, and that's just another a mark of when things are starting to go well. When players that you were done with, players that you didn't think were capable of these sort of displays, are doing what they did last night. And we joke a couple of times on the Patreon site when we're doing the man of the match, be it in the car pod or in the post match pod for the away matches, that under the new manager, it's not easy to pick a man of the match game by game because it's such a team performance across the board. The team are performing all as sevens. Some of them are maybe getting an 8, and that's how we're able to pick a man of the match. But it's team performances all over the place, and I know I keep saying the same point. We didn't have that. We were not seeing that. It's remarkable, I think, just how quickly things have changed and the improvements we're seeing already in such a short time. Like I said, it excites me for just how good it can be. This season I thought was over. Cammy, I'd written this season off. I thought we were out the Champions League. We were already so far behind in the league. We didn't have the greatest Europa League campaign results in the early part of the tournament. Now, this season's wide open again for me, and the sky's the limit. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I said I want to set myself up for a fall, but I'm generally an optimist when it comes to Rangers, and at the minute, I'm super optimistic and looking forward to every game as they come.
Yep, and listen, I can totally understand that because I think that's been the story of our season so far. Do you know what I mean? We haven't hit what we expected the heights to be when we had the intake of new personnel in the summer, and now we're starting to get probably more consistent performances from almost every single player. I would say in terms of where that sits at. So Rangers, I think, went in at halftime. There's a really interesting point, Colin, which it's funny. I was kind of thinking about it as I was rewatching the game last night. Um, the After the second goal, the Cantwell goal, Sparta Prague seemed to have a kind of team meeting to be able to discuss what was going on, and I suppose 10 of those players would have immediately turned around and looked at Gomez and went, "Yeah, you're the problem." However, um, we got to we got to half time, come out for the second half. And it has been interesting about what our reaction has been to this, because it felt a little bit, and I've read a couple of things and I've heard a couple of things in terms of different reasons for it. So I think my own opinion is Sparta Prague tried to regroup probably the latter part of the first half. They did it at halftime, and then they started to show it when the second half kicked off, that they probably started to regroup a little bit. We started to absorb a bit of that. The manager made mention in his press conference afterwards that there wasn't the same intensity of tempo. I understand that. I think the manager has said well before the game last night that he's not been happy at fitness levels. As much as we've seen these improvements happen on the pitch and happen very quickly, you can't improve fitness as quick as he would like. It's just simply physically not possible. So I was kind of okay with it, if I'm being honest, in terms of us not having to stay at a high tempo, as long as we didn't make any silly mistakes. And I don't think we did. I know obviously we've allowed Sparta back into it with what I actually thought was a very well worked goal. And it did set up a nervous close to the game. And as always, within hindsight, you were maybe feeling a little bit more nervous than you actually should have. However, when we got that ridiculous 6 minutes of or injury time, which was really more like 8 or 9 by the time we were finished fanning about, I just didn't ever feel like we were in real shaky ground. And that is because this team has made me believe that again.
It's almost like they've suddenly overnight learned about game management, Cammy, and how to calm down, how to take a step back, but still be in control of the game. And I think that's what they were able to do, despite Sparta Prague's little on pitch team talk after the second goal, which was kind of a bit like, remember Phil Brown done his half time one on the pitch?
Oh,
The,
God.
kind of that sort of vibe from that, but it didn't work. It's the second half, like they couldn't be as bad in the first half as they were. In the second half as they were in the first. So they were always going to come out and do a little bit more. Our players have played a hell of a lot of football. We've had so many injuries. We've not been able to rotate as well as we probably want to as well. So the players we picked last night were they had a lot of games under them. So I would get why our energy levels would maybe drop a little bit as well. And it's been big games. It's been semi-finals at Hampden recently and things like that as well. But watching it back today compared to watching it in the stadium last night, it didn't feel as anxious or as worrying as it was when you're sitting watching it. We were relatively calm. I think a good point is that when they did get their goal back, we immediately went up the pitch and scored again. Now it didn't count. VAR came in rightly or wrongly and ruled the goal out. But that strikes me as a team that were able to sit back in the game, but when they made the mistake and they lost the goal, they shot right back into action and they're able to go up the park and score. That's a team that I think's got levels they can get to, and they're actually learning how to manage those levels and do the smart thing with the game, and that's something they've not been doing either. So, yeah, watching it back, it wasn't as worrying. I don't think the second half performance was as poor as I thought. We just controlled the game a little bit better, which is what you need to do when you've got a squad that's struggling with injuries still and so many games, constant games of weekend, midweek. This international break, which I hate the international breaks, Cammy, but this one's coming at a decent time for us. We've had some good results, we've had a good passage of play between international breaks from one to the other. But I think we do need a little bit of time to regroup, get some players back healthy, and then come out of it ready to go. So yeah, watching it back, nowhere near as bad as I thought in the stadium. It was a great night's performance.
I'd expand on that point as well, actually, Colin, because I totally agree with you. By the way, I think it is. It's a very, very uh, it's a very, very big thing for us to be able to notice how we recover. But actually, do you know something? I would probably even go a step further than that and say we recovered from conceding, and we also recovered from not getting the third goal.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's very, very true,
We
actually.
didn't go, oh shit, the
Yeah,
world's against us and blah blah. And it's like, and again, I know we're obviously talking a little bit more just outside of the Sparta Prague game, but I think that this has served as a really good focus point, certainly a kind of a nucleus, if you will, about we've shed what I think we've been guilty of in the past of the victim mentality. We've not felt, oh, woe is us, that's poor, blah blah, what have you. And again, I've got to say it's symbiotic. I think of where the manager has come in with that mentality, the players have bought into it, right? And I think that through various different comments that have been made by players, I think it's fair to see if you read between the lines, part of their commentary has been it hasn't really had shape or direction, and
yeah,
now we do, and that's fine. But there has to be a belief, and so you're absolutely right. I think when you see that as well, that it wasn't a case of right, well, we'll just get frustrated, we'll do that as well. Now, two other things that I need to make sure that we talk about because it would be remiss of me not to is you mentioned earlier on a little bit around the kind of time management, game management side of the game. I will absolutely applaud Jack Butland on that. I am I am getting legitimately worried that we could lose Jack Butland because he had very little to do last night. However, he did make a fantastic save towards the near end of it. And I'm old enough to remember keepers like Chris Woods, who for a long time wouldn't really touch the ball. However, when he was called upon, he had to make saves. Butland, I think, is just. I think similar to what we were saying before about Todd Cantwell. I think Butland has just. I think he relishes his decision to come to Rangers. I think it's allowed him the opportunity to play regular games, be part of, as I said before, a senior leadership group, be part of being able to try and shape it. Now, if you and I, Colin, are sitting on this pod in 6 or 7 months, and you and I are both hoping and praying that this happens, but we're talking about the trophies that we could win this season and have won this season, by the time we get to the end of it, Jack Butland will have played a major, major part in that.
absolutely. He's been the by far the bright light from this summer's transfer dealings so far. Danilo might go on to do more, or perhaps maybe not do more, but get more attention because goals always get more attention than saves. But at the minute, minute for minute, game for game, he's been fantastic. He brings a whole new dimension to Rangers goalkeeping, which sounds a bit of a stretch, but it's true, Cammy, because he's the first modern goalkeeper we've had in terms of he's quite comfortable coming out for things. He comes out for crosses, but he's also an excellent shot stopper. He races out his box to break down play at times as well. And that's just something that a great lineage of great keepers we've had over the years. My lifetime, I've been spoiled in my 39 years on this planet with Rangers goalkeepers. But with watching Alan McGregor for the last couple of years, Almaguer's a fantastic goalkeeper, one of the best, if not the best we've ever had. But he wasn't a modern footballer. He wasn't happy with the ball at his feet. He wasn't coming out for things. Jack Butland has all of that and then some. And you're right, I think, to call out that he loves it here and he thinks he's made the right decision. He put something up on his Instagram last night after the game, and it was a image and videos of his son, his young son, in the stand last night during his song getting played. And it's stuff like that that it just shows you how bought in these guys are when you see some of the stuff they're putting on there. He speaks really, really well. He does press quite a lot for the club, and when he speaks, he's really, really good at getting his point across and talking about not just what's going on at the club, but why it's going on and stuff like that. He's played in the EPL, Cammy. He's played regularly in there. He's also been the third goalkeeper at Man United. He's experienced it all down there. He's experienced what it's like to play there week in, week out. He's also experienced what it's like to just be at a club like Man United and have that experience as well, albeit not playing very often. He's now came somewhere where he's competing for trophies. He's one game away from getting a domestic cup. We're right back in this league campaign. We're now doing well in Europe, and he's got the Scottish Cup to come. Why would he want to go? And if he does, worst thing that happens is he does go on, but we would get a huge chunk of money for Jack Butland at this point in time. So we would reinvest it and we would do what Rangers do and find another fantastic goalkeeper. But I hope we don't.
Yes, I'm trying not to look too far towards my namesake when you say things like that. Yeah, listen, you're right. It's about his involvement within the group. I think he's incredibly happy he made the move that he did. I think he shows that within his performances and exactly as you said there in terms of his commentary as well. The other player that I want to be able to talk about, who I think made a difference last night, and had he been given slightly more game time, might even have chalked up an assist or potentially even a goal himself, is Ross McCausland. The manager, I was at the CEO fans forum on Tuesday night past Colin, and effectively it was the kind of senior panel from the club. And one of the really interesting things that was asked around obviously youth development, the manager was there briefly at the start. And it was talked about, we enjoy as Rangers fans seeing youth prospects coming into the team, dominating, being able to try and come in and really, really contribute towards the first team and stuff. We love seeing it, right? We absolutely love seeing it. You mentioned Alan McGregor before, perfect example of that. However, for me, Ross McCausland is getting some game time within that because the manager fully believes in what he's trying to do. I think he is getting an opportunity which isn't based, and we've seen this happen before, purely on key injuries in specific positions, because we have flung players in at the deep end beforehand when that's happened. I think of, Leon King, Liverpool, etc. But McCausland came on last night, Colin, and I think that you see the embodiment of what that Rangers team is looking to try and do now, because every single time he got the ball, he was looking to try and play forward with it. He set up Danilo with a beautiful chance as well, with a fantastic through ball, which I think that ball from McCausland travelled about a mile and a half to be able to try and get to Danilo. It was beautifully threaded. Um, but if we can line up more involvement for him, if we can see that as a pathway for other players being able to see where their opportunities will lie, because as you rightly say, now that we've been able to do a bit of recovery this season, my hope is that even when the Scottish Cup begins, for example, we're still in the European stages, touch wood, we're still competing for the league, we won't have a let up in fixtures. So all of that means that McCausland should play more of a part. And if we have other youth prospects coming through, this manager has already highlighted the fact that he will look to be able to try and give that youth a chance.
He has said that, yeah, and that's something I'm really excited about because we always have prospects coming through from a youth point of view, but we don't always get the chance to see them because our first team games are seen as too important. Sometimes we've thrown youngsters into. We don't have the flexibility to just bring one in and see how they do. But this guy's came in, and probably the biggest compliment I can give him, Cammy, is that when he plays, I don't think, oh right, okay, there's young prospect McCausland. I think, oh, there's McCausland. He's going to be quite good, I bet you. He doesn't. He's not playing like a youngster anymore. He doesn't look like a prospect from the B team. He just looks like one of the first team squad already. He just seems to fit it in hand in glove already, and that's really really good to see. He came on last night as a sub for Cantwell after 70 minutes. There was options on that bench for Dessers was still on the bench, Lawrence was on the bench, Cifuentes was on the bench, Sterling was on the bench, Roof was on the bench, but he was the one the manager went to first. And I think that says a lot about him. He came on, within a minute or so of being on, he played the most beautiful ball last night into the box that got everybody in the stadium up off their feet. Sadly, Danilo fluffed it a little bit in the box, couldn't control it properly and lost possession. But that ball then came out to McCausland once again. He seized it, grabbed onto the ball, ran down the right hand side, and then started cutting in, trying to get the cross across into the box. He seems a little fearless. He seems like he's ready for this. He had a shot and later on in the game as well. So he's not coming on and just having a couple of nice wee touches. He's coming on and making a difference and actually trying things. And he seems fearless. So we should be fearless in our options of using him. We're playing these games, like you said, weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek. We've got the 5 substitute rule in place still. Use it to our advantage. Get games won, get players off the pitch as early as possible and get him on. And I don't want to sit in this show or any other show really and start slagging off the Lammers and the Dessers this world. I think it's been done to death. We know where we're at with these players. But if you're telling me that somebody like Lammers can do a better job from the start than he possibly could, then I'm going to say you're wrong. I would love to see him just coming in. If we're at the point just now, injuries wise, where Lammers is a first pick, I don't get why McLaughlin isn't in that position starting the matches. That's how good he's been. I think he's got potential. So let's unleash that potential. The only way we're going to find out for sure is by giving him games, give him minutes, and we've got an opportunity to do it now. So do it.
Listen, absolutely. I think what's really important as well is that he's involved within these games, and they're high-profile games. They are a tough opponent. Sparta Prague. I totally understand that they probably had an off night last night. I'm again, as I say, I'm not saying that they were a complete washover. I think that through our hard work, we removed a big part of the contest by going ahead so early within the first half of the first half. But all that to one side, there's opportunities there for us to be able to learn and grow from that, and probably making a little bit more of incremental improvements. And I think that that's what the manager wants to be able to try and do. He made mention as well, Colin, at that fans forum that was mentioning there, that because of the games being so regular, being so such a congested fixture schedule, that there's going to be times where actually we probably wouldn't even do physical training sessions if he feels that the players are still recovering from a game, a couple of days after. But they'll still have sessions where they'll do some video analysis. They'll look at some of that stuff as well. So he'll mix and match that in order to be able to try and give players the best chance to not only learn, but also to be able to train and again, like I say, improve those fitness, get players back from injury, get them up to speed, etc. So again, all power to him in terms of what happens. I think we are in a fantastic position to be able to ensure that we still have European football in the second half of the season, which I think for me, especially when we're involved within the Europa League, is an absolute must. And I think the manager has come in and been able to try and recover some of those journeys. We obviously started it really well with a win over Real Betis at the beginning of the group stage, but our performances in Prague and certainly in Cyprus, where the stuff of huge concern. I don't have any of that concern any longer, and I didn't feel it when we were in the closing periods of the game last night, and Prague potentially could have equalised. All that being said and done, we are back to league business for our final league game before the international break.
Cam, just before you go into that one, just one last thing on last
Certainly.
night's game, if you'd beg me the indulgence. We spoke a lot about the players and the improvements in the players and a lot of what the manager's done. I'd like to just also, I think, just call out the crowd last night as well, because I think the crowd played a huge role in last night's match. And this is a crowd that we've seen this season rightly, absolutely at their last tether with this team. Furious at the final whistle in matches, booing the team off, rightly or wrongly so, but doing it. Last night, they were behind the team from the start. The atmosphere was fantastic. The singing was fantastic. But when the second half came and the performance dipped a little bit, the crowd didn't. They stayed there.
Yeah, no one backed out.
And they stayed there when Prague got the goal back as well. They were right back on top of it, started singing, right back behind the team, and then we got the goal and it worked. And so kudos not only to the crowd for doing that, but kudos to the management team and this group of players that have enabled that to happen by giving the crowd something to believe in again, Cammy, and something to actually enjoy watching. So it might be a minor thing in the grand scale of things, but to me, I think it's worth shouting out because we've seen how toxic at times the stadium's been because of what we've been watching, and not just what we're watching, but the prospect of what we're going to be watching for weeks and months to come, because we just didn't see it getting any better. And in a short period of time, it's improved so much so that we can completely drop tempo a little bit in the second half of a game. We can lose a goal, and we're still completely there. We're completely bought in, and we're confident of what the team are going to do. And like everything else we spoke about earlier, doing that in just such a short period of time is remarkable.
Totally. And listen, do you know what? I was going to give the crowd a lot of plaudits, but like I said to you before, we started singing Belinda Carlisle again, and that just, that's what ruined it for me. So, no, but listen, all joking aside, I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely right to call that out. It was remiss of me not to mention it. But you're right. There's the word that I used when we did the car pod last night after the game was there's a cohesion now between the team and the fans.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's not just at Ibrox. I mean, again, like I said, I was in the same at Dundee, same at Hampden. but there is now more of a concerted bond between both of those bodies that it now feels like we're all back on the same side again. So yeah, listen, couldn't agree with you more. Great point, and yes, thank you for calling that out. Yeah, so we are back to league business on Sunday at the Tony Macaroni Almondvale Spaghettiad Stadium, whatever it's called this week, I forget. And it's back to Livingston. Now, if you can tell me your thoughts on this without using the words plastic and pitch, I would be very, very impressed. Um, Interesting development, though, Colin, and again, you and I were discussing this last night, actually, is that Livingston have just announced that Brian Rice, former SPFL manager at Hamilton Accies, has now joined Martindale at Livingston. Martindale, I think, was connected pretty strongly, actually, with the St Johnstone job. Uh, for me, if your manager is getting talked about with other jobs, it's because of the fact that they are being successful. There's no two ways around it. Um, as much as it feels pretty much like a home game because we take 3/4 of the ground, it's still a tough venue to go to. I still have a lot of respect for David Martindale. I feel very much like we are now in a much better position because we've got a better focus, but we can't take that away. We absolutely can't take an eye off the ball with this. And I think that the manager made mention after the semi-final win that the players can celebrate getting to the final of the League Cup. They can do that right up until Sunday night. Monday morning, however, we have to prepare for Sparta Prague. So I'm very sure that he's told them the same thing. Enjoy that win against Sparta. You've earned it. You worked hard for it. That's great. But, when you come in Friday morning, we're now going to start talking about Livingston. And I think that's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, Livingston's always a difficult one. Going to that synthetic surface. Um,
I
however,
knew you'd get around it somehow, you sly dog.
I always try. Yeah, it's interesting. Rice coming back in there. It's a position they've had to fill because they've been working without a first team coach since Christoph Berra left them at the end of last season. And I think we all know David Martindale is one of the hardest working managers in football because he seems to be doing everything at that club. I think he cleans the toilets, makes the halftime pies, he does the lot. So he'll be welcoming somebody else to come in and kind of take on that load and help him there. It's surprising that a guy with kind of pedigree as a manager is happy to come back in at that level. He's been working at Alloa and he's done okay there. But yeah, he'll add something there definitely. I think they'll complement each other quite well. We've had Livingston's number so far this season. We beat them 4-0 twice, both in the league and in the cup. So they're not a team that we should be worried about, but they are a team that we saw can on occasion causes a problem. We have dropped points to them before. I don't think that'll be a thing this weekend though, Cammy. I just think that we are on such a good track at the minute. We are on a good path. We know what's important. We know what we need to do, and it would be remiss of us to go into this game, take them too lightly, and make a mess of it. And I just don't think that will happen with this manager and the run that we're on at the minute. So I'm confident of the 3 points. It won't be easy, but I think we'll do well, and we'll all be happy come Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I think so as well. Again, I'm confident because the team and the manager have been, they've allowed me to learn what that feels like again,
Yeah,
and we've proven that with performances, and we've proven it results. And it sometimes felt, and by the way, this even goes all the way back to Van Bronckhorst, that you could have one or the other, but you couldn't have both at the same time. And now we have both. So again, like I say, it's about being able to have that belief again, and probably just to, I think, do what we've really wanted to do, Colin, which is not overthink an opponent and not give an opponent too much respect. Obviously, Clement has not been to Livingston yet. I'm sure he's going to absolutely love it. Mainland continental Europe doesn't compare with West Lothian, of course. However, all that to one side, he will also realise that this is like the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of Scottish football. He encountered that at Dens Park. He's going to have to go to places like Livingston, and I've always been a big believer, Colin, that certainly when the Old Firm games, I understand all that, and you know, of course it's key, but it's also about being able to get to places like Livingston and being able to come back with 3 points because they won't make it easy. They won't make it tough. And again, Martindale's been a thorn on our side before. Um, he's he understands how this Rangers team can play. Personally, because I've got a lot of time for him as an individual, I think it's good that he does get linked with other roles, because I think he potentially is bigger than Livingston. Whether or not he can do that at a higher level, I don't know. But again, like I say, I think he's done a great job there. So we just can't take it lightly. But all of that being said, we should not take it like a huge task. It
No,
shouldn't be something that we just think, Christ, all of a sudden we're playing Real Madrid. It doesn't work like that in the real world. But for some reason, as we mentioned before, it's like we overthink it for no good. It's why I despise talking about that pitch, because I still think that we should be able to play it, as you rightly said, on a synthetic surface. Of course, it's shit. Of course, we'll deal with it. But these players it's not their first time doing it.
no, it's not.
So
And
just
we've got
don't
those.
let it affect you.
Yeah, we've got those surfaces at the training ground, so in theory, you just train on those for a few days before it, and that should even things up. Livingston's always interesting. It's going to be the next step or the next test for the new manager. And I think Livingston Cammy's always an interesting one for somebody new to Scottish football, because they must get to that stadium and think, what's this place called? Why are our fans in three of the stands? And what is this pitch? It's just a
To,
big
in
shock.
defence of the players, Colin, I live in West Lothian and I don't know what the stadium's called.
Yeah,
So, do you know what I mean?
wild. So it's just one of those funny things with Scottish football where things are weird, things are a bit different, and it's the next part of his Scottish football education. He'll know what it's all about before he gets there, and I trust him to not overthink it. I trust him to think it just enough, Cammy, get it just right to get the 3 points, and then we go into this international window pretty happy, pretty contented, and looking forward to when the football comes back. And when was the last time we all felt like that?
You're totally right. It's exactly what I was going to say. We all used to love the international breaks because it gave us time off for Rangers, because we just couldn't be bothered with them. Now
Exactly.
we're at a stage where, like, right, when is the Aberdeen game? Like, how many? We'll have a couple of days off of it, and you'll be like, Christ, time is moving backwards.
That's it.
So yeah. Listen, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, folks. Just to give you a little bit of kind of housekeeping, in terms of just an update. I've got a request from our very good friend Rob Shorthouse, who is part of the Hong Kong Rangers Supporters Club. They are celebrating their 30th anniversary, and our very own David Edgar and Adam Thornton are heading over to Hong Kong to be the heart and hand travelling team. And they will be on stage alongside such privileged guests as Richard Gough. And we just wanted to say all the best to the lads from Hong Kong. A lot of expats out there who do a hell of a lot of work to be able to try and make sure that they keep in touch wherever they possibly can with all things Rangers related. It's a very tough gig when you have to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to be able to watch Livingston away, but these guys are as committed as they come. So a huge congratulations to the Hong Kong Bears, to Rob, a very good friend of ours as well, and Podder. I'm sure the boys will enjoy their trip across there as well. Richard Gough is always phenomenal value. And I'm going to leave you at the tail end of the pod with a little bit of a catch up from David and Rob as they talk about what's happening with that. Before we do all that, most important thing for us to be able to try and do is thank not only my guest, Mr. Colin McMillan, this week. Thank you so much for coming on extra, Colin. It's much, much appreciated.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you, Cammy, and of course the listeners.
Thank you to the executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Miles. Thank you as well to our show sponsor, Zenith Coins. Please head over to zenithcoins.com. And if you've enjoyed listening to us and you need that Rangers fix, when we get to Sunday afternoon and Rangers have won at Almond Vale, and you're thinking to yourself, what do I do next? How do I hear more about Rangers, and what can I do? Why not come and join us on patreon.com/heart and hand, where you will have literally hours and hours of content on there yet to be released across the course of international break, because we don't stop, but also a huge archive of content material for you all to be able to try and go and enjoy. There is literally not a Rangers subject that we have not covered. So please jump over there and join us. Thank you everyone for listening. Have a brilliant weekend. As best you can, enjoy the international break, and we'll be back with you really soon. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Joining me now to discuss the 30th anniversary of the Hong Kong Rangers Supporters Club and the imminent celebrations for that is a man that you will know well from Heart and Hand, folks. Yes, it's Rob Shorthouse. Rob, how are we today, sir?
I am very well and very excited because we have a fairly lengthy programme of celebrations coming up over the course of the next wee while, of which you are playing a part, good sir.
Yes, delighted, surprised and delighted to be asked, but very much looking forward to it. Quite frankly, I suspect and deserve to be way down the bill considering some of the names that you've got coming, but I will do my very best to help out. Now, Rob, you've been in Hong Kong for a while now, and genuinely, folks, without going into it, Rob loves Hong Kong. You've tried to go away from it. It didn't work. You were back there pretty sharpish, miserable as sin while you were away from it. But there is a large expat community out there, and there always has been this Rangers island on the island, really, hasn't there?
There has been, David, and the club formally, the reason that you're coming over and the reason that we're having this celebration is because formally constituted and all that kind of stuff. It's our 30th anniversary, but I think that Scots have played a huge role in the history and development of Hong Kong, and so there's always been Rangers fans here. But as I say, it's a bunch of guys came together and formally decided to make it official 30 years ago, and that's what we're going to be celebrating. And in terms of like clubs, we're not as big as some of the other clubs you'll get in NASA. We're not as big as the Dubai Loyal, which I was briefly a member of, as you mentioned, when I attempted to leave Hong Kong in disgrace. But we do have we've got a fairly steady sort of loyal group of guys who've been involved for a very long time. So this is a really important occasion for us. There are some people who are part of the celebrations this coming week who were there at the foundation of the club 30 years ago. So it's a great thing to be able to celebrate, and it's a really good club. So the good thing is just in terms of what the plan is, really, we're very fortunate that a wee while ago, I think before COVID, one of our members had been chatting to Richard Gough, and Richard sort of expressed how excited he would be to come out to Hong Kong for an event. So of course we recorded that in blood and stuck that in our back pocket. And so when the restrictions here in Hong Kong were lifted and all that kind of stuff, we made contact with Richard, and Richard said he would come out again. So he's going to be the guest of honour at our gala dinner and a couple of other events that are happening over the course of the piece. We're going to be taking them to the Happy Valley horse race, and touring about Victoria Harbour in a boat with all the guys from the club. And when I say boat, it's not like a dinghy you would get in Victoria Park. It's a sort of nice big yacht and everything else. So there'll be all that kind of lovely stuff that we're doing. But the two big events, I suppose, are the gala dinner that Richard's going to be the guest of honour at, which we're all very, very excited about. And David Mason, the club historian, is going to be coming out for that as well. And then the other thing is, and that'll be, by its nature, will be quite formal and suited and booted, and we'll have to be on our, I suppose, best behaviour for a while. But the night after that, that's where we're going to be working with you and Adam Thornton about having a night in one of the pubs in deepest darkest Wan Chai in the middle of Hong Kong Island, where yourself and Adam will have a bit of a mini live show, and Richard will be there, and it'll just be an opportunity, I think, for Richard to be relaxed and tell lots of stories about his career and his life at Rangers, his life after Rangers, and just one of the things that I've never really spoken to him before, but you were mentioning to me off air, David, that he's a fantastically amazing presence, as you'd expect, but he's also incredibly funny and entertaining, and he's just got great stories to tell. So we're really looking forward to that night with Richard and you and Adam.
In the way that Walter Smith is the gaffer, I think if you're our age, and that's no disrespect to anybody who's maybe older than us and so others, but if you're our age, he is the captain.
He absolutely is.
It's just that simple, isn't it? He is and the funny thing is, whenever you see, and those of you who've seen Richard Gough at events will know, all the other players just instinctively go back into that mode. They just instinctively go back into he's the skipper, he's in charge. It's quite funny to see, actually. But listen, we have a lot of expats in the Heart and Hand community, and I've been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of them. I've been fortunate enough to go to Narsa and to go to Orsa. And how important is it when you do move abroad, and you have an exciting new life, that's the reason people go, but to almost have this as an anchor, a wee route to back home, to have Rangers in your life, and how important is it to have that sort of community sense, Rob, when you are in a new and alien environment?
David, the first person I met when I moved to Hong Kong almost 6 years ago, and I'm not kidding about this, the first person I met was the secretary of the Rangers Supporters Club. Scott Semple, who's been on the network a couple of times. His dad Billy played for Rangers, actually.
That's right, yeah.
He was literally the first person that I met in Hong Kong. And you see it here in Hong Kong, you'll see it in Singapore, you'll see it in all these places where there are lots of Scottish expats. A community builds up round about the supporters club, and the club itself is very, very important. And you see these guys every week at all sorts of weird and wonderful times of the night, and you're negotiating with the owner of the pub where we meet for the supporters club, and telling her it's very, very important that this game against whoever the hell it is, Braga, she has to open at the pub at 4 a.m.
John's been away.
So, I mean, to be fair, I live in one of the outlying islands, and even I draw the line at going to St Johnstone away at 4 a.m. on a Wednesday. But it is very, very important, David, as a focal point for the community, because you've got that shared interest. But again, as you say, that kind of link to back home, because all of us, grew up before we went away and moved abroad, watching Rangers, being in love with Rangers, and going to games and all that kind of stuff. So you have to replace, as I've done, as a season ticket holder for years and years and years, I've replaced my match day experience with going to the pub to be with the boys in the club, as opposed to going to the game itself. And we should never underestimate or overstate or understate, whatever the right word to use is, the importance of things like Heart and Hand, because the ability to get on-demand content that's reliable and trustworthy, and from a source that you want to hear from, is really important, because we are not surrounded by the noise that you guys have back home, the constant sort of presence of Rangers, it's ubiquitous in the media and everything else. We have to actually go and seek out the content. So having something like Heart and Hand and be able to access it and get content when you want it, because of the time zones and time differences, is hugely important. So that's why when we were doing the planning for the event, we wanted to get Richard Goff, but we also wanted to get you guys out, because I would say 80% of the people who are members of our supporters club at least will be Heart and Hand subscribers, and if they were speaking to you right now, they would be saying the same thing about the importance of Heart and Hand in terms of how you keep in touch with the club.
Well, they could have had you. I mean, you're in Heart and Hand and you're there, but I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they decided to get us.
You'll discover when you come out here that if there's a rung, I am at the very, very bottom of that ladder. So the notion that somehow I would be any kind of star attraction in any night or any event would be preposterous.
No, I've always said the reason I get invited to these things, folks, in case you're wondering, is because I don't drink, and what it means is the likes of Rob and that and the organisers, they can go, right, Davey, we need you to do this, and they can all go off and get blutered, and I'll just take it. So I think that's the main reason. But no, I'm very much looking forward to it. Rob, if people want to read a wee bit more about the history, etc., where can they go on the old interwebs?
So we've got all the usual social channels, and that will link off to our website as well. I mean, our website needs a wee bit of TLC, but our social channels are kept up to date. So Hong Kong Rangers Supporters Club on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter, and again, now that we were the last place in the world to open up after COVID, but before COVID, loads and loads of guys would be coming through Hong Kong and the doors would be coming to the club. So if you ever want to find out if you're coming out this way and you want to find out about the club, then just to connect with our socials and you can get all the good information there.